All right, House Administration or House Education Administration is now in session. And members, if you would, if you'll go ahead and log in. All right, Mr. Clerk, if you'll go ahead and let us log in so we can take roll. All right, Mr. Clerk, if you'll take the roll.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 members present. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. And welcome back to another year in Ed Administration. I think we'll probably have quite a few bills this year, but we start today with just one. But before that, any personal orders from anyone? I have a personal order. I would like to congratulate our own Chairman Mark White, who is now the chair of NAEP. He was named chair of NAEP back in October, and let's congratulate him. So, how long, Chairman White, how long have you served on that board? And tell us a little bit about your responsibilities with NAEP, if you would.
Thank you. 5 years, been on the NAEP board, and because everybody's familiar with a National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is the nation's report card. Very big on that. Without the nation's report card, we really don't know how all 50 states are doing. And Tennessee used this back under Governor Haslam right around 2013, 2012, that we realized NAEP said, you're only 34% proficient. We thought we was doing a lot better. So we used those NAEP scores and we adopted higher curriculum and higher standards. And then we tested to those standards. And now we're in the mid-20s. Mississippi, you ever heard of the Mississippi Miracle, where Mississippi went from 50th in reading, and Superintendent Kerry Wright over the years, who's now at Maryland, Mississippi is now number 9, 9th place out of 50 states in reading proficiency. And so how do we know that? NAEP score. So every 2 years we test our 4th and 8th graders in math and reading around the country, and it's very valuable. So the role I have as chairman, it's a 26-member board. We meet in D.C. 4 times a year, and had to keep it going. So it's been very interesting, good learning experience. My first year up there, I didn't open my mouth because they started talking about things like psychometricians and all that. Hadn't had a clue what they were talking about. And here they are, made me chairman.
Well, very good. Well, hey, congratulations for that. And that is very good for Tennessee for us to have Chairman White there in that role. So thank you so much. It is a new year and have the same members, so we won't go through and have everybody introduce themselves. Glad to have my legislative assistant, Chelsea, working again with us, and then Carly as far as research, and then Katie when it comes to any legal questions that we have. So our attorney, and then we do have, though, a new clerk. And go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name's Andrew Gunter.
Andrew, thank you so much. Glad to have you. And then back in the back, now returning, but nobody ever gives any credit to the person back in the back, but that is Elizabeth. I remember that from last year, and she records everything. And then Sergeant of Arms, if you'd introduce yourself, and he's been assigned to us.
I'm Terry Van Truth.
Yeah, and it's good to have you. Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to it. I have one other item of personal business. They just came in, and this is Juanita and Lonnie Gaddy, correct? Wave at us there. All right. These are friends of my sister, and she just sent me a text with your picture. That's because I've never met them, but when you came in, I said, okay. She told me that you were on your way. So thank you so much for being here. And they're in town for a conference. My sister was able to come and visit this weekend, but she told me you were on your way. So thank you for being here. All right. With that, we have one. First of all, House Bill 1219 from Representative Johnson has been taken off notice. That brings us to House Bill 1288 by Representative Powell. Do I have a motion? A motion and a second, and I believe you have an amendment. Is that correct?
I do. The amendment just changed the enactment date to 2026. It's drafting code 115. 14.
All right, and that's what we have here. So that simply changes the date members of the original legislation. Do I have a motion on a motion and a second on the amendment? And so the amendment is attached to the bill. And all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion or the amendment is attached to the bill. With that, go ahead, Representative Powell, and you can present your bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Good to be in front of this committee. Members, happy New Year to you. This bill is in response. Creates a school safety grant fund. It's in response. Last year, Antioch High School, which is in my district, there was a unfortunate school shooting where a student, Jocelyn Correa Escalante, lost her life. And unfortunately, the students at that school were put in a situation where they had to go right back into that building. And this took place in the cafeteria area. And so I had a lot of parents that came to me and said, is it possible for there to be some sort of a fund that the state could create so that, we would not have to have a situation where we went right back into the same building. And some efforts were made by the local school board and to make some modifications. But unfortunately, the school is very heavily attended. Its enrollment's very full. And so it was a situation where we could just shut down the school. And so students had to go back right in the next day. And sort of the emotional trauma that those students had to go through to go right back into a facility and be in the same general area as one of their students who had lost their life was very traumatic. And so they asked if I would be willing to run a bill to look at that, to create this fund so that other students would not have to face that same situation. So this deals with that, prevention, reduction, response to efforts whenever there is a school shooting in our state and in our city.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. And all of us, of course, remember that day. It was a sad day for not only our community, but our state and those of us that serve on education committees. I mean, those days, just those tragedies hit us very hard. Do we have any questions for the sponsor? All right, Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you. And thank you for addressing your constituent needs. Now, the fiscal note on here is 10 million. Is that still correct?
It is, and I can't speak to how they arrived at that fiscal note. I mean, there's some calculation and notes in there. But
So in this particular case, the example you gave us, is there a minimum or maximum amount of the grant you can ask for in this bill?
the department would be able to promulgate those rules.
Depending on what they're asking for.
Correct.
Okay. So, in this situation, I'm just trying to get my head around this. So what would they be asking for in the example that you gave us? What would this Antioch school be asking for?
Sure. So in the example that I just illustrated, they could ask for modifications to be made to that building. Perhaps if it was in a wing, that wing could be taken out. It would sort of depend on the different situations that exist. We might also look at enhancements to make sure that we're protecting the safety of those students moving forward. And we've taken some of those precautions here in Nashville, but that would also be part of it if they said, hey, we want to install different types of security measures that are in place. If they want to have grief counselors that come in, those are the kind of things they could apply for the grant for.
So this would be establishing a grant where it depends on the high school and the need. They would request it through the department and they would take it from there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Representative Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Powell, do you recall from our budget last year how much was put in to the school budget for safety measures?
It was I do not remember the exact specific amount. I don't have the privilege of sitting on finance and hearing that, but and while I do commend those safety numbers that are put in, we also need to make sure that we are able to make the adequate changes that have those monies available if this situation was to occur again. So while those are safety measures, this is in response to an actual shooting that took place. And hopefully it doesn't happen again, but if it did, that communities could quickly tap into those grant funds to make those changes to their facilities.
So what I'm looking at here is the document that is the calendar says disperse grants to LEAs and public charter schools that have had a shooting or other firearm related death on school grounds. And we know terrible people are going to do terrible things, not only at schools, just around the world and in our communities. What measures did the school system take after the fact? Did they put in metal detectors and anything like that already? I mean, I would like to get in front of this instead of behind this type of situation.
So yes, they've taken security measures at the schools. They've taken multiple different schools in Metro Nashville. However, the other thing that occurred that still is a challenge is the fact that those students have to go right back into that same facility where they just witnessed a fellow student who was lost to gun violence. So that is the specific need that this is addressing.
Right.
There's also capabilities if there's extra money to provide it to security. It's left up, honestly, it's left up to the schools. I think our schools know best what they need. And that's why they would put the proposal together and ask for the monies that they seek to have.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my life and my time in service to our country through the military, there was a thing we called after action report. Whenever we went on a mission, when we came back, we talked about what went right and what went wrong. And of course, hopefully it's any chaos and death that takes place. It's not only our schools. We're seeing some nonsense in our church, public places, church buildings, and all of that. And here's what I'm trying to wrap my head around is we're in a new session, working with a new budget. We all got some fantastic bills, and especially when we're talking about education, and we don't know what the governor has in mind until after the State of the State address, because I've got a lot of people on hold. And of course, there's some caption bills being placed out there because if the governor's not going down the road that we want to go, then we'll be looking at that. And I just think, a $10 million fiscal note on this, that's my obstacle trying to get over at this time. And I guess I will stop with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of tell me, I'm trying to understand the process that you envision this looking like. And I feel like the Department of Education will promulgate rules, but you've mentioned, the problem of the students having to go right back in to the school. Obviously, with this grant money, there would be a process. And are you talking structural changes? Are you talking things that take time that the students would have to go back anyway? I'm just trying to see how your vision on what this would look like as far as the type of changes this would entail on the grant.
Yeah, sure. So for example, if we needed to bring in, other type of structures where the kids could go and study and learn in, else that would avoid them the need to directly go into that same space would be an idea of that. As I referenced, if there was a ability to, let's say it took place in a certain wing of the school to perhaps demolish, renovate, fundamentally change that, so they're not feeling like they're going to the exact same space. And that's where the challenge was for the school system, is there's just not the money available to make that happen. But it would also allow for the other things such as prevention, reduction, response efforts. For example, I've got a school within my district that hasn't been renovated since the 1960s. And literally there are multiple access points that exist in that school. So if something were to happen there, that would be quite sizable. Fortunately, nothing's happened at that school, but doing those kinds of things would be the kinds of things that I'm talking about in this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Representative Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sponsor, for bringing this bill. I think when I envision it, I think I look at it from number one, it's an afterthought. We're talking about putting money in a school after death. To me, that's kind of asinine. We want to do something after something happened. So I think, when you talk about if we're going to do it that way, a $10 million price tag, and again, it's not to say it's small change, but it's to say that's a small investment for kids to be able to come into their learning environment and not have to relook at something that was traumatic to them. We do it all the time, if there's something that happens at our home or at a place that we visit, we either stop visiting it because it reminds us of that death or that, whatever happened. We make adjustments at our home if something happened. My mother-in-law fell down the stairs. So instead of us remembering when she fell down the stairs, we changed the way the stairs look because we don't want to recall when she fell down the stairs. And so I think, you mentioned some security measures. I think we just really need to focus on if the kids are coming back into this area and we want them to focus on school, I think this is a small price to pay if we want them to focus on school and not what happened that caused them this traumatic incident. So I like the bill. I hate that it's an afterthought, but I guess at the same point, if we got to get something done, then we got to get something done. So I like the bill. Thank you so much for bringing it.
Thank you.
Chairman White, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to do a follow-up. It should be the will of the committee to move this out to full committee. Like I believe that we can't do enough to protect our children. But I would like for us to have an update. Maybe you can work with Ms. Bowers on this, do a little research. What are we currently doing? Get an update because we need to look at this every year. In 2023, the legislation was we're provided over $200 million for school safety, but $135 million of that is for school resource officers. So that just leaves $65 million, and the rest is for schools to put new doors, locks, surveillance, homeland security, and all that kind of stuff. So I would like to get an update, Mr. Chairman, on what we're currently doing. So when we talk about something like this, we know what fits and that we're not just appropriating money, but we're actually addressing the issue. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, 100%. And I'll say this, most people don't recognize this, and we can debate this, but, when we had the situation with the Tennessee 3 and that whole day, we all remember, I think everybody up here was serving the legislature when that occurred. People forget one thing happened that morning is actually, I think it was your school safety bill that you had and added an amendment to it. And that was added a floor amendment. Almost never happens, specifically a member of my party being able to add a floor amendment. But it was dealing specifically with those panic alarms. And so we added that. That has since taken place. And now there's a capability if somebody breaks into a school. So I take that very seriously. I do. I just want to make sure that to my other colleagues from Montgomery County's comments about when this situation does happen, we want to make sure that these students, there are some funds available so that they can alter their learning environment so that they're not thinking about that tragedy. They can focus on school. So, but yes, I'll commit to you with that.
Yeah. And I'm not opposed to what we're doing. And I would personally vote to move it on to full committee. But I just want to make sure when we're asking for money that we are continuing to put in place things that actually work and not just feel good because we appropriated $10 million.
Understood. Yes.
Anyone else? Chairman Subcommittee?
Thank you. Legislative intent is very important whenever you present a bill. Is your legislative intent that if this bill and this grant becomes active, that we're going to relocate at Antioch High School 2,200 students to some other facility while we renovate a school building? How logistically is that going to happen? 2,200 students.
So as I mentioned in my comments, this would be to make certain changes to the school. I've not said we should tear down Antioch High School. But where that tragedy took place in that one specific area, making those sort of changes so those students, when they enter that space, don't have to reflect upon that.
You recognize?
So explain to me what that looks like. Let's say it's a wing of the school, because it wasn't just one spot, it was multiple spots. How do you do that? I mean, these kids' education, that still has to continue. How do we do that? Tell me how we do that so it's on the record.
So there's multiple different ways I envision this happening. One is, if it was in one specific classroom, you had to close that classroom down. You could potentially look at bringing some like a portable in on a temporary basis until you were able to make those changes to that school building or that school classroom. In this situation, happened in a cafeteria. So you could use that money on a temporary basis to have another place where those kids could eat, and then make those renovations to that specific space.
Okay. One more. And in the bill, it's evident, and I'm just curious, because this happened in Davidson County also. Why did you omit private schools that have a shooting?
I'm sorry?
Why did you omit private schools that have a shooting? Because we allocate SRO money for them, we allocate school safety grant for them, but in your bill, we had a shooting here in Davidson County at a private school, and this excludes them. Why would you exclude them?
So, and actually, the private school was fortunate enough to be able to go in and make some significant, they actually tore down most of that facility and were able to rebuild, because we're talking about public dollars and making sure these public funds are available for those public schools and charter schools that don't always have access to those same private funds. But I agree. I think anytime there's a shooting at a school, we should be able to have the.
Would you consider that a friendly amendment in full committee?
Sure.
Anyone else? Let me make a couple of comments. First of all, hearing you present the bill is quite different than what I read in the language. When I read the language, like one representative already mentioned, it seemed to be, reactive instead of proactive. And then the other part of it was that when I read it, it looked like these funds were going to be used for security enhancements in the future, which once again is reactive. But then when I heard you explain it, I now kind of get what that intent is, but I'm not sure that the language is quite right there. I agree with you that it would be great when there is hopefully there'll never be another tragedy, but when there is a tragedy like this, it would be great to be able to pause and have a mechanism in place to where there are dollars available. In other words, a conduit for dollars so that schools, school systems, students aren't having to make quick decisions that put students right back into a place that just really would just conjure up all kinds of things. I'm with you. I mean, I see your heart here. I see what your constituents have brought to your attention. And I agree with you. I'm just not real comfortable with the language. I think that the language leaves it way too broad to accomplish what you've described for us here as far as your intent, which I can agree with that. I think leaving off the security enhancements, because we do have, to another's point, we do have those things in place. I think this is something different than security enhancements. I think it's exactly what you described for us here. I think that this is a good idea. I'm just wondering if you would be amenable to maybe taking a little time with this and then bringing it back to us. But that certainly, or we can go to a vote. But your response.
Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that, and basically kind of outlaid my vision, to legal, and we drafted the bill as such to try to address this. I would hope, again, continue to work on this. If you're uncomfortable with the language, continue to craft it in such a way that you feel the goal of the bill, the purpose of the bill is to support schools after there's one of these tragedies, to support students like those at Antioch High School that were, they were victims too, right? And still dealing with the emotional tolls of that. So I'm at the will of the committee. If we move it out of here, I'd love to move it on today. There's somehow I'll end up getting, I think I had this bill on last year, ended up at the very end of the calendar every time it came out some strange way. So I'm trying to keep my bills moving forward this year. If we can move it out of this committee, I'll keep working on it. I appreciate your suggestions and other members' suggestions, but that's my intent, was what I'm trying to do with the bill.
Okay, any other comments from members? Chairman Wayne?
Yeah, and I agree with Chairman's comments about the language. One thing I'm not seeing in here, and correct me if I'm wrong, it kind of leaves it wide open to, it does, I think the LEA has to need to be specific to what they're asking for, because right now they're just asking for money to address a school shooting, and who's going to be the judge on what they need. So I think the school should be a little more, if this happens, they should be very specific in what they want the money for. So I think that would be something we should consider in the bill also.
Yeah. And Mr. Chairman, if I could, and that's why leave it up to the department is also important, I think, for them to promulgate the rules.
Chairman Sapiki?
And I agree with Chairman White. I think you need to be a little bit more prescriptive on what these funds can be used for. So we don't find them going to things that turn into a wish list. These are actual safety grants. And maybe you put something in the bill that requires them to interact with the Homeland Security agent for Davidson County to do another threat assessment to see where these funds should be used. Maybe it just gives another level of security there, that we know that, hey, there's a second set of eyes of professionals that are looking at this, whose sole intent is to evaluate what happened, the tragedy, look at what's in the school, and then come up with a recommendation to the district on, hey, these are the things that are going to specifically make a difference going forward. I think we're just looking at a language issue. I think if we can just clean the language up for you, I think you got a bill. If you're amicable to that, I know legal's sitting here, and we can probably talk to legal here afterwards and task legal on what an amendment might look to this, and maybe get your bill in a position that I think the committee can get behind. Just a thought.
Okay, so I was just consulting, and it's been placed on the calendar. You still do have a role. I'll just, give you the answer to the test. For me, I think it needs to come back to subcommittee before I would feel comfortable with my vote. But if you would be open to, rolling it and then working with legal, I certainly think something's here. Representative.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. If I could, if I could request a 3-week roll.
Okay. All right. Without objection, rolled 3 weeks. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Any other business for the committee? All right. Seeing none, hearing none. Without objection, we are adjourned.